Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our Herbert Employer of the Day. We have Syngenta as our employer this week, and we are joined by Dr. Ethan Parker. So I'll let him start by introducing himself and just telling us a little bit about his current role.
Yep. So welcome everybody. My name's Ethan Parker. I am a PhD who graduated actually from UT in Knoxville back in 2017. I am currently working with Syngenta out of Vero Beach, Florida. So basically paradise. My role here is an R&D group leader. So I work to manage a team of scientists and technicians, and we work primarily with discovery and innovation and research around early stage chemistry for crop protection products, any type of pesticides, but also fertilizers, soil amendments, and things of that nature. So I've been working with Syngenta now almost 4 years. Started here as a research and development scientist and was promoted a couple of years back to group lead.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're really excited to have you here and awesome to have a Herbert alum with us. So can you tell us a little bit more about Syngenta and what the company does and where some of those primary locations are?
Sure. Yep. So Syngenta is a crop protection company by founding. It was founded back in 2000 as a merger of some ag divisions of other companies. And so Syngenta is a crop protection company. We mainly focus on herbicides, fungicides, insecticides, nematicides. We also focus in smaller markets as well, things like home pest control. And so primarily those are our businesses of interest. But in the past 5 to 10 years or so, we've really made large investments in digital agriculture, working with precision application, drone technology, imaging, and other agronomic scouting tools, as well as the seeds. We've acquired a lot of seeds organizations, particularly in North America, but also globally in the last 5 to 10 years, with a focus on trying to grow our seeds portfolio, offering better agronomics, better lines so that growers can have more tools in the toolbox. In terms of locations, I'll try and share my screen here. We talked about trying to make this work, so hopefully it works. We have quite a few locations across the world. So hopefully you guys can see this now. If not, I'll make sure Alexis has it so she can post it as well. These are primarily for the crop division of the company, the crop protection side. The seeds organization has a lot of sites as well. So about twice as many of this globally is what you would normally see. You'll see a bunch of dots there in the US. I work at Vero Beach, Florida, so the dot there in Florida. But there are also other sites. We have Visalia, California, Downers Grove, Illinois. We have several sites in North Carolina as well that focus on seeds and crop protection research as well. But there are also global sites too. The primary ones I work with are Alhambra and Uberlandia in Brazil. I also work quite a bit with the site here in Goa in India, Chikenpek, which is in Indonesia, Gelatil in the UK, and then of course the US sites as well.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Can you speak a little bit about the company culture of Syngenta and why you like working for them?
Yeah, so I actually mentioned this to some of the students I talked to earlier. So Syngenta, our headquarters is actually in Basel, Switzerland, and due to that, our leadership teams are very cultured in the way of being Swiss and being European, and it makes them very flexible as an employer. They really focus a lot on work-life balance, which is not just a statement. It's something that they actually believe in. We care very deeply about our employees, about their mental health, about their well-being, both in and out of the office. And so there are a lot of different benefits beyond, good pay and good benefits of health insurance, right? We have flexible working arrangements, flexible working hours, very, very good or strong sick leave policies where we, allow people just to take off if you're sick. We don't expect you to be here and perform, under those conditions. With COVID, we've had to obviously shift a lot in our working environment, but we actually had a lot of those things in place before COVID. So it made the transition really easy to allow people to work from home, continue to collaborate, continue to get their work done, but making sure that people are still protected and safe, and still able to get things done. So, for me, it's about family. I've got two small daughters, and we live quite far from any help in terms of grandparents. So our employer has been so flexible for us to allow me to work from home a lot, to take off time when I had a child born. Even fathers get parental leave with Syngenta. So you get a full month paid to take off and spend time with your family if you have a child. Same thing with grievances. If someone passes away in your family, you get lots of time off for that that's paid. So they're very flexible with that, and they're very devoted to your work, but also devoted to your time outside of the company.
Awesome. That's great. Thank you for sharing that. This kind of shifting gears a little bit, but what do you expect from students at virtual recruiting events?
Yeah, so, I'd say the big things are probably things you've all heard before. Be cordial, be prompt. So make sure you're there on time. Dress professionally, right? I mean, even though we're virtual now, make sure that you present yourself well, because this is still a professional business setting. Come with questions, be prepared. As much as I like to hear myself talk, it's really good to engage with people who know at least a little bit about our company, know about what we do, so that we can engage in some serious dialogue about where you might fit in the organization or what you could contribute to the company. Just be prepared, have some questions, be relaxed. It's not anything to be terrified about, but just show up the same way you would for an interview or a face-to-face conversation with anyone in a business atmosphere.
Awesome. And kind of along those lines, what kind of jobs and internship opportunities are available right now at Syngenta?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I will throw up a QR code for everyone so that they can scan it. We have countless opportunities right now. So we employ over 29,000 people worldwide. And hopefully you guys are able to see the QR code on the screen there. And so you can scan that. That'll take you to Syngenta's career page. It's a global page, so you can click by country if you're interested in working internationally, or you can click United States to see what's available domestically. There are a plethora of things there. Use the filter functions if there's geographies you're interested in. It's one thing Syngenta is interested in is keeping people in a geography they're comfortable with. We're not going to ask you to move somewhere where you and your family aren't going to be comfortable. We want you to be happy, again, in and outside of work. And we think you do your best work when you live where you'd like to live. So use those geographical filters, and also looking at the qualifications, right, to understand where you might fit. But right now we've got plenty of openings. Even with COVID, we're still hiring. There are no hiring freezes or anything of that nature going on right now. They've opened all that back up. For internships, I'm going to send Alexis a link to have just all the internships. So for those of you that might be undergraduates or maybe even early stage graduate students that are looking for internships, we have quite a few of those. There are a lot with the sales team out across the territories. We're actually hosting a few research and development interns here at Vero Beach this year at our research center that I'm stationed at. But there are also some within the seeds organization for plant breeding. There are also some available in procurement and supply chain as well for those that might be in agribusiness or ag econ majors and things like that. If you're more chemistry focused, we have some that are available in North Carolina that work in our chemistry labs. You can shadow and see how those functions operate. So a little bit of everything for everybody across the College of Ag.
And so our students can just directly use this QR code to go on Syngenta's website and apply for those positions, including internships? That's
correct. Yep, those are there. You can just search in the search box for internships. And it'll pull those up. And again, I'll send you a link so you've got those as well. Deadlines to apply for most of these, I think they usually run through March is when they close for this year. But keep in mind that we'll start posting some in the fall again for the following year. These are all paid internships, so we don't do any volunteer stuff. It's all paid internships. Other benefits change from internship to internship. Some have signing bonuses, some cover moving expenses, some have provided living or stipends to help with that sort of thing. So, just read the details of each specific internship because they will vary, but they all are paid and they're pretty competitive in terms of their payment.
Awesome. And when our students are going to apply for these, what kinds of experiences would make them a good fit for these internships or full-time opportunities that you all have?
Yeah, so for the internships, there's not a whole long laundry list there because again, these are internships. We're hoping to get people in that may not have experience and help them grow and learn. Obviously, if you do have experience that is, comparable to what the position is you would be doing, maybe that'll help. But for the internships, I would say just come as you are, be professional, be cordial, present yourself as having, the work ethic and the self drive to succeed in business. But in terms of actual hands-on experience, your classes and labs are probably enough. For full-time positions, again, it's going to be highly variable depending on what you're applying for. But all of our job profiles will have a paragraph there about requirements, so job qualifications, and then it'll also have a paragraph there for things that are recommended but not required. So for like the scientists that I hire, right, I'm going to require a master's with at least 3 years of experience or a PhD degree. There are other non-negotiables, right, depending on the role. Maybe you need to have resistance management experience or field experience or some sort of agronomic experience that'll be spelled out. But then there might be other things that are recommended, right? Maybe that you've managed a small team, or maybe that you've taken certain classes in pathology or entomology or weed science. So just tune into each of those opportunities. They'll be very clearly spelled out. Syngenta has a very standard format for how they present job roles. So even if it's an internship versus a senior research scientist position, those criteria are going to be presented in the same order every time. So it should be very easy to locate and see your qualifications.
Awesome. That's great that those expectations are clearly laid out there. So kind of along the lines of the documents that students are going to be submitting, so like a resume, is there anything that a student could put on their resume that would really make them stand out in these applications for internships and full-time jobs?
Yeah, so obviously a lot of the business buzzwords, right? I mean, there are things that people look for, and it'll depend on the hiring manager. But flexibility is one, right? Because we work in an ever-changing work environment. I mentioned earlier to some students, I work in greenhouses, lab, field, and those things transition quick. Because we work in research and development, a lot of times projects can be initiated or dropped really quickly. So it's a very agile industry. So anything that you can say that would present yourself as being flexible or having an ability to change tasks quickly without losing on productivity, those types of things are very good. On top of that, I would just say, anything that you have that applies directly to that role. So if it's an internship and, ag business, talk about your ag business courses. Make sure that you're clean and concise. A lot of these hiring managers don't have time to pour through pages and pages. So especially for internships and, undergraduate level work, be concise, only pick the things that really stand out. If you've done something that applies directly to that role, put it on there. But if you worked, a job that maybe has nothing to do with the role, you can leave it off. There's nothing wrong with that. In terms of graduate students, you can be a lot longer with your resume, and probably should. You've got a lot of research experience. You may have publications or extension presentations and other work that you've done in a laboratory or field setting. Make sure you capture that. 3-4 pages is not unreasonable. Some more of a CV type format, something that's a little bit longer. I'll tell you another thing that's beneficial, Alexis, is cover letters. Providing cover letters, we often don't ask for those, but Syngenta does have a place for that. So a cover letter is a really nice, concise way for us to get to know you as a candidate, see what your interests are and how they line up with the company culture. And references too. Not all hiring managers put a lot of weight on references. I do. I call everyone's references even before the interview because I want to see how your answers line up, with what you say versus what they say. So providing references, and often Syngenta will ask for those, but even if they don't, say, references if asked for, or even just go ahead and provide a list of 3 or 4.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. So just to reiterate, for undergraduate students, usually like a 1-page resume and a cover letter is fine.
Yes.
And then for our graduate students, something a little longer, following more of a CV format, 2 to 3, maybe even 4 pages, depending on how much experience.
Sure.
You mentioned cover letters, and that's a great point. We always encourage our students to submit cover letters. Is there anything that you think a student needs to include in a cover letter to, again, make that stand out in the applications that you receive?
Yeah, I can't speak for Syngenta as a whole, but as a hiring manager myself, the things that I look for is kind of a half to a 1-page format where you have a paragraph of introductory. Hey, here's who I am. Here's where I go to school. Here's my major and where I'm at in my studies. With a second paragraph saying, hey, here's the experience I have that applies directly to this role that I think would be a really good fit. And then, just a closing statement, right? Here's my ambition for this internship or job, but, here's what I look for in the future and would like to grow in the company. So those are the types of things that I typically receive, and they do really well for getting selected.
Yeah, so just explaining how their experience kind of matters for the position they're applying for. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. When I see those things, it usually makes me spend a little more time on a resume because I know they're interested. If they took the time to write a well thought out cover letter and talk to me about their experience, then I'm going to take the time to definitely invest in the resume.
Awesome. Yeah, so my last question here, what advice do you have for students who are starting to search for jobs and internships right now, especially in the midst of a pandemic?
Yeah, well, there's a million things here, right? But one, make sure you're comfortable with digital technology, Zoom, Teams, whatever platform it is you use for video conferencing. Make sure you're comfortable with the settings and the feedback and how to test those things, because that's the norm for interviewing now as we do this, virtually. So make sure you're comfortable with those things. There's nothing worse than being late to an interview because you couldn't get your Zoom set up, and people are flexible now. They understand that, but it looks much better if you're able to hold on to those things. Another thing is often people have put on their resumes the digital technologies they're familiar with, Microsoft Office, all these different tools, Microsoft Teams, Google Hangouts, all these different things. Leverage those now because it's cloud-based. We're operating, still collaborating. We're still conducting all the work we were before, but we have to do it digitally now. So any of those things that you have that you can leverage, make sure to include that and talk about that and your comfort level with working with technology in an interview type setting. Don't be intimidated. Try to be relaxed. I know it's daunting, but understand an interview is not the end of the world, right? And so, we're people too. Oftentimes when you're pulled in for an interview, you've already sold the committee on your capabilities, right? We've already seen your resume. We know your background. We know your training. What we're looking for is, can you fit in our company culture? Can you fit with our team? Are you a decent person to work with? Hiring is one of the hardest things I do as a manager, because if I don't hire good people, then I'm left with dealing with those challenges for years to come. So be presentable, be professional, just speak professionally, but, just be a decent person. And I know that sounds really basic, but just convince people that, you are willing to work with a team, that you have servant leadership attitudes. And that goes a really long way to getting you hired, at least within our company.
Yeah, it sounds like students just really need to be themselves in these interviews and relax. It's just about connecting with the people that they're being interviewed with.
Yeah. Yeah, just because someone has PhD by their name, they're human too. They were where you were once. So we understand that. You might have daunting questions. Here's another piece of advice. Do not be afraid to say that there's something that you don't know. I would much rather someone in an interview say, look, that's out of my expertise. That's not something I'm familiar with. Don't just say I don't know, but say, look, that's something that I'm definitely interested in going and learning about now because you brought it up, because it's not something I'm familiar with. But don't be afraid to say that. I would rather you admit to me that, hey, there's something that I don't know, than to try and pretend you know something when in fact we can tell if you don't, because that tells me about your integrity and your honesty. And in science, that matters quite a bit.
Well, Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Parker. That was my last question for you,
Sure.
but I will be recording this or posting it on YouTube. And certainly, if those links do not work in the recording, I'll share
Okay.
those in the description. But thank you again for joining us. We really appreciate you connecting with our students
Sure.
and also just providing great advice for them as they are searching for jobs and
Yeah,
internships.
you bet. Thanks, Alexis, for the time, and I'll make sure you've got my contact information as well, so you can put it there. So for students, thanks for tuning in. If you have any more questions, certainly don't hesitate to reach out. We'd be interested in connecting with you and seeing where you might fit with Syngenta.